Frequently, Angela Merkel invited a selected group of journalists to secret meetings in the office of the Chancellor. That was going on for years until it's probably still going on, but a journalist of the newspaper Tagesspiegel had sued her over it last year, and successfully so. There's a journalistic code for the result of how this kind of meeting is being used in media reports. And the German terminology would be that is an among three meeting. That means um, when they hear from the chancellor some information, they have then to go out and find some backing or evidence for it on their own, and cannot quote the meeting itself. So it is a strictly a secret meeting. There are similar codes like among three, unter drei. There's also among two, and in that case, a talk is referred to in news sources, but only vaguely attributed to the source. In the German articles, that would then be called aus der Parteispitze, that means from the top brass of the party, or from government circles, Regierungskreise. These are the words that flash into your eyes when you read a news article, and you do not really know where the information really comes from. And this is what they call among two. That is how journalists refer to this kind of opaque sourcing of information. And CNN is frequently criticized as referring to anonymous sources all the time. This is what Germans have been used to for many more years than Americans have. And usually this is done with these references to pseudo sources, like as members of the organization say, or the environment of the rock star utters, this kind of sourcing. Among two. Among one would be if the person who gives the information allows the journalist to actually refer to him as being the source. Now there was this mentioned lawsuit. Jost Müller-Neuhof, the journalist and editor of the newspaper Tagesspiegel, was not invited to any of these meetings, and I find it quite surprising that he would take them to court. He is actually a lawyer, and that may be the reason why he was so eager to find out, and his colleagues could not tame him down in time. But I think he will probably have forfeited some career options by taking the chancellor to the court. The reality is that his publisher, Holzbrink, which is also owning Zeit, the most ideologically pure mouthpiece of the government that we have. Holzbrink most certainly has a hot wire into the chancellor's office. Most certainly. So it is funny that actually somebody from Tagesspiegel was finally the one who questioned these secret meetings and wanted to at least know the dates, the topics, the names of the attendants, and also the places, the rooms of these meetings. Yet the office of the chancellor, they have lost the case now. That was in 2016, I think. Yes, it was. And the office of the chancellor has raised an objection, or an appeal, a legal appeal, against the decision. And Angela Merkel's lawyers wrote a 50-page long statement in which they argue that the secret talks are of outstanding importance for the operationability of the Chancellor's office. Now this is a direct quote from this 50-page appeal, writing for the appeal. Now, I have no direct access to this document, or at least I can't find where this kind of legal paper can be requested. But it is directly quoted by Tagesspiegel, and the articles are archived, so it is pretty much safe to source them, and it is reliable. So this quote and some of the following quotes are directly written in publicly available legal papers. I'm sure that I just haven't found those papers myself, but they most certainly are publicly available. Tagesspiegel quotes them, and I take the quotes from there. So the following quotes are actually the opinions of Angela Merkel and her legal team. And they say that meetings behind closed doors were in the core area of executive self-determination. It were a decade-old, time-tested instrument to shape the wishes of the people and to communicate the government's wants. And in German, that would be jahrzehntelang erprobtes Instrument zur Willensbildung und Willensvermittlung, communication of the wants. For the purpose of effectively shaping the wishes of the people by the federal government, there must be a trustful area of communication between the government and journalists, says the paper. It continues with the revelation of these secret meetings. The revelation would lead to an irreparable loss of reputation of the Federal Republic inside the country and abroad. Now, I have to say that one of the most painful challenges, I would say, to overcome this totalitarian wave is this underlying narcissism that is so typical of Germans. I mean, it is actually a joke. I have seen US comedians joking about it, but you can flatter Germans by saying this or that phrase in German, and they are all, oh my goodness, somebody pays attention, or I must be the greatest country in the world, and everybody's looking up to us, and we are now somebody again. And there are all these phrases that are so revealing of the insecurity that many Germans have of this, being deprived of love and want to be loved again. It's maddening, and this is also a source of this entire aggression that we see. So what they fear is not that something is bad, but the messaging is the problem. Narcissism leads to the shooting of the messenger. You have the irreparable loss of reputation. If somebody speaks about a problem, the reputation is not lost by the problems or the misbehavior. And gathering journalists for secret talks because you want to reward them for beneficial reporting and for being kind to the chancellor is quite dubious. I mean, to be honest, and this is not public knowledge. I mean, there's a court case over it. The judge decided that actually they have now to disclose all these dates, rooms, participants, and even the overall topics, whereby there's a lot of leeway to fool the public. But the court has already confirmed that these secret meetings of top brass journalists that all claim to be independent and our leaders of government take place. And the legal team of Angela Merkel have confirmed in a public legal document that they believe it is their job to form the opinion of the people, Willensbildung, and to communicate what they want to the people, so that we obey. That is their mindset. It is public knowledge at this point, and yet it is not widespread enough and not in the details. It doesn't say Marietta Slomka of news show Heute was in the Chancellor's office at 8 p.m. on Tuesday, this date, and so on. It doesn't say any specifics so far, but the government claims that if that were mentioned, there would be an international crisis and everybody would raise their eyebrows, and they would be quite right. So anyway, so the paper, the legal document for the appeal says the government must have the possibility to check how a given political position is palatable media-wise. So that was what they presented to the court, that secret meetings were important to know what policies they can actually run against any opposition, how much support they have from the media. And what that actually reveals is that those 10 media chief editors, let's say, that they are in complete control of our government. That basically our democracy is in the hand of maybe 10 people, or let's say 20. I mean, at least far too few people and unelected ones who decide what changes can be done and what cannot be done and what changes must come and so on. And our political leaders completely rely on them and are basically their puppets. Our media does not criticize the government, it controls the government. It is not the fourth estate, it has become the estate, and that is not democratic. At least as long as the media is only a small group of people and just some corporate owners, and not as the founding texts of our Western system actually meant, a citizen that is distributing to wider masses important information. The media, as Benjamin Franklin had thought of it, was basically everybody with the press. The government also fears, according to this paper by Angela Merkel's lawyers, that the revelation of these metadata, the dates, the rooms, would lead to an immediate end of these conversations. So they are aware that once the details are given of what journalists, and it's most certainly, you can already smell in the air who is probably attending these meetings, that this would cause such a distrust in the wider public that the media figures would distance themselves from the office of the Chancellor immediately, and these conversations would stop. Now, I don't see that as a bad thing, but obviously, as they claim, it's their core responsibility or part of their self-determination to have these meetings. They see it as a problem. Now, the German Association of Journalists does not take side with your average journalist that has not attended these meetings, that may just work for a regional paper and that is good-spirited and believes in a fair and independent media market and all of this. But rather than that, they take side with the government and have called this court decision a farce. But why is there a German Association of Journalists if there are only a couple of journalists anyway that hold all the power? Of course, this is a facade, but there's something underneath this, and that is that we still have medieval guilds in Germany. It is called Verbandsmacherei. We say that with with a tongue-in-cheek, like as if something funny were about this fact, but we actually still have strange associations of professions that make no real sense, and in a free market, free society, you probably would not expect these things. But political power is concentrated in these strange conglomerates, these guilds that have just remained from the medieval times, quite frankly, and they wield an enormous power over those who are sometimes even forced to be member. Um, so they they are rather controlling their members and representing them, and therefore it is logical that the German Association of Journalists would rather side with these few uh, owners of big corporations and probably with the public broadcasters, and against those wider uh, um, you know co-workers or workers in the media market on the local level, the grassroots journalists who may also take an interest in what the chancellor has to say. By the way, Angela Merkel is also a YouTuber. That's you know um, everybody's talking about Trump being on Twitter, but Angela Merkel is actually a YouTube star. She could say everything she wants herself on her weekly podcast or YouTube video. Um, but she chooses to speak in secret with the main leaders of the media outlets, and probably rather strategizes with them what can be said and what must not be said, and how the opposition can be demonized, and all of these things. That was it for today, and I'll see you soon. Bye.